The sentence reached Ethan before he understood why it mattered, floating through the warm kitchen air like a quiet warning wrapped in calm words. This has been building for a while, and he froze near the doorway, one hand around a coffee mug, rain tapping the windows behind him as if the world itself was listening. He hadn't meant to overhear anything, he had only come to return a book to his friend Noah, expecting noise, jokes, comfort, not this low, careful conversation between Noah's mother, Linda, and her longtime friend Claire Whitman, who was visiting from Canada for the weekend. Claire's voice was steady but soft, the kind of voice shaped by years of choosing words carefully, and Ethan felt something tighten in his chest even before he understood the meaning. The house felt different in that moment, smaller somehow, as if walls could hold secrets, and Ethan should have stepped away, should have cleared his throat or made his presence known, but he didn't. He stayed still, caught by a feeling he couldn't name, aware only that the sentence had weight. Claire went on, saying she hadn't planned anything, that she had tried to ignore it, and Linda replied with a tired honesty that feelings didn't ask permission, and those words landed harder than the first. Ethan's mind raced, not with clear thoughts but with a sense that something important was unfolding just beyond his reach, something that had nothing to do with him and yet felt deeply personal. Claire was not a stranger, she had been around for years, always kind, always composed, the type of woman adults trusted and younger people respected without effort, and Ethan had never looked at her as anything more than part of the background of his friend's family life, but now, standing there unseen, he realized he had noticed her more than he admitted. The way she listened when people spoke. The calm confidence she carried without pride. The way rooms seemed quieter, steadier, when she entered them. Ethan's life, by contrast, felt loud and unfinished. He was 24, recently out of college, unsure of his path, carrying a quiet disappointment from a relationship that had ended not with anger but with distance, and maybe that was why this moment struck him so deeply, because it hinted at something honest and unresolved, something adult and real. He finally stepped back, heart beating faster, his body reacting before his mind could catch up, and when he walked into the living room he felt as though he had crossed an invisible line. When Claire appeared later, holding a cup of tea, she smiled at him with her usual warmth, unaware or pretending to be unaware of what he had overheard, and that smile unsettled him more than the conversation itself. They exchanged simple words about the weather, about Noah being upstairs, about the long drive from Toronto, but beneath the surface, Ethan felt a strange pull, like a tide he hadn't known was coming. He noticed how tired Claire looked in a quiet way, not weak but thoughtful, as if carrying thoughts she didn't share easily, and when their eyes met for a second too long, Ethan felt an unexpected rush of awareness that made him look away. The afternoon passed quickly, filled with ordinary moments that felt sharper somehow, like colors after rain, and Ethan kept replaying the sentence in his head, wondering what had been building, for how long, and why it made his chest feel tight. He told himself it was none of his business, that adults had complicated lives and private struggles, but the truth was that something inside him had been stirred, a sense of recognition he didn't yet understand. When evening came and the house filled with the smell of dinner and easy laughter, Ethan found himself watching Claire from across the room, noticing small things he had ignored before, the way she smiled with her eyes, the way she paused before speaking, choosing honesty over noise. He felt guilty for watching, for wondering, but he couldn't stop, because part of him sensed that this weekend, this visit, this quiet sentence overheard by accident, marked a turning point. As the rain outside slowed and the sky darkened, Ethan realized that whatever had been building was not just something between two adults in a kitchen conversation, but something within him as well, a question forming without words, a feeling that life was about to ask something of him that he wasn't sure he was ready to answer, and as he sat there, surrounded by familiar people in a familiar house that suddenly felt unfamiliar, he understood one thing clearly: some moments don't announce themselves loudly, they arrive softly, like a sentence spoken too quietly to ignore, and once heard, they change the way everything else sounds. The evening moved quickly, yet every moment felt sharp to Ethan, as if his senses had tuned into something new, and when he stepped onto the back porch and found Claire already there, the air between them felt different from before, calm but alert, like a pause before a decision. Soft lights hung above the wooden railing, glowing against the darkening sky, and the sounds of laughter drifted from inside the house, distant enough to feel private. They spoke easily at first, about small things that didn't matter much, her work in Toronto, his search for direction, the strange way time felt heavier after college, and Claire listened with full attention, not interrupting, not rushing him, which made Ethan open up more than he planned. He talked about feeling behind in life, about friends who seemed certain while he felt unsure, and Claire didn't try to fix it, only nodded and said that uncertainty often meant growth, not failure. Her words didn't feel rehearsed, they felt earned, and Ethan realized how rare it was to be heard without being judged. The conversation moved naturally, gaining speed as comfort replaced caution, and Ethan found himself laughing, relaxed in a way he hadn't been for months. Claire shared pieces of her own life, not details, but feelings, how routines could quietly empty you, how ignoring your heart came at a cost, and Ethan sensed she was speaking from experience. The porch grew cooler, the lights brighter, and the space between them seemed smaller even though neither moved closer. Ethan noticed how her eyes held both kindness and restraint, as if she was standing at the edge of something she had promised herself not to cross. At one point she looked at him carefully and said he had grown into himself, not as praise but as recognition, and the honesty of it caught him off guard. He admitted he still felt unfinished, still searching for what fit, and she smiled softly, saying most people never stop searching, they just get better at hiding it. The pace of the moment increased, thoughts moving faster, feelings surfacing before they could be filtered, and Ethan became aware of his own heartbeat, steady but strong, a sign that something meaningful was happening. Inside the house, a door closed, footsteps passed, and the reminder of others nearby brought a quiet tension, a shared awareness that this moment existed on borrowed time. When Claire stood to go inside, Ethan felt an unexpected pull, not physical but emotional, a reluctance he couldn't explain, and before leaving she paused, turning back with a seriousness that shifted the mood. She told him that feelings often grew quietly, unnoticed until they were already part of who you were, and the words struck him with clarity, connecting the kitchen conversation to the present moment. Ethan wanted to ask what she meant, wanted to understand what had been building and why it felt tied to him now, but the words stayed locked behind caution and respect. Claire gave him a small, thoughtful smile and stepped inside, leaving the porch empty but charged, and Ethan stayed there longer than necessary, staring into the dark yard, replaying every sentence, every look, every pause. When he finally went inside, the house felt louder, brighter, almost overwhelming, and he realized that something subtle but powerful had shifted between him and Claire, something unspoken yet alive, and as he lay awake later that night, staring at the ceiling in the quiet guest room, he understood that part 2 of this story was not about attraction alone, but about recognition, about two people seeing reflections of their own quiet truths in each other, and knowing, without saying it out loud, that once a feeling is noticed, it cannot be unseen. The next day unfolded in a rhythm that seemed ordinary but carried an undercurrent Ethan couldn't ignore, every glance, every laugh, every small gesture from Claire loaded with meaning, as if the weekend itself was stretching time to let them notice what had been quietly growing, and Ethan found himself acutely aware of the moments that might have been invisible before. Breakfast passed with light conversation, Noah chattering about his plans and leaving, and suddenly Ethan and Claire were alone in the living room, the air charged with all the words neither had said, attention soft but insistent. Rain began to fall again, soft and steady, drumming against the windows as if marking the passage of their unspoken feelings, and Ethan realized that the storm outside mirrored the restlessness inside him. They spoke carefully at first, about books, music, and memories, safe topics that carried the weight of normalcy, yet beneath the surface, every pause, every shared smile, hinted at something deeper. Claire's eyes held a softness that Ethan hadn't fully seen before, a combination of warmth and caution, and it made him aware of how much he wanted to bridge the space between them without overstepping, a delicate balance between desire and respect. He tried to measure his words, tried to be casual, yet each phrase seemed to reveal more than intended, and Claire responded in kind, her own restraint matched by fleeting honesty, admissions that their connection was undeniable, even if complicated. They laughed at small things, shared memories of mutual friends, yet every sentence seemed layered, a dance around the acknowledgement of feelings neither could claim outright, a mutual understanding that this weekend had opened doors that life usually kept closed. Claire spoke quietly about not wanting to cross lines, about the importance of awareness and care, and Ethan responded with a mirrored caution, assuring her he felt the same, while inside, his mind raced with everything that was left unsaid. The rain continued, a gentle backdrop that emphasized intimacy without intrusion, and Ethan noticed the way the soft light of the room reflected off Claire's hair, the thoughtful way she gestured, the calm confidence that had drawn him to her even before this weekend. The conversation deepened subtly, moving toward the unspoken truth that both of them had been aware of a growing tension, a bond that had formed quietly, almost unnoticed, and now confronted them with its presence. Ethan admitted, softly, that he had been feeling more than casual interest, a truth that Claire acknowledged with a gentle smile and a quiet sigh, admitting she had sensed the same, a mutual recognition that was both comforting and frightening. They didn't need physical contact. The honesty itself was enough to make the moment intense, fragile, and meaningful. From the hallway came the faint sound of a returning family member, a reminder that time and circumstances were still governed by ordinary life, prompting Claire to stand, her movement graceful, almost reluctant, signaling the temporary end of this private revelation. Before leaving the room, she said softly that pretending nothing existed would feel dishonest, a statement that struck Ethan profoundly, making him realize that the bond between them had already moved beyond casual connection, rooted now in truth and acknowledgement. He nodded, matching her caution and hope, feeling a sense of relief that they could admit their awareness without forcing action, respecting boundaries yet recognizing what had grown. The rain's rhythm outside seemed to echo the heartbeat of the room, steady and insistent, a reminder that life continued. Feelings continued, and decisions would follow, but for now, they existed in that suspended space where truth and care met. As the afternoon faded, Ethan understood that part 3 of their story was not about resolution, but about recognition, the deep emotional awareness of another person who sees you fully, the gentle admission of longing, and the promise, subtle but undeniable, that this connection was real and significant, fragile yet unbreakable, and that both of them would carry this awareness forward, knowing that the weekend had changed the way they viewed each other, and that whatever happened next, honesty and respect would guide the next steps of what was quietly, powerfully building between them. The weekend drew to a close with an almost unbearable swiftness, each passing hour reminding Ethan that Claire's visit was temporary, and as suitcases were packed and rooms tidied, a quiet tension lingered between them, a mixture of hope and hesitation that neither could fully name but both deeply felt. And when Claire asked Ethan to walk with her down the driveway before she left, the air felt heavy with unspoken words, the sky clear and washed by the rain, casting a soft light over everything as if the world itself was giving them permission to pause and take note of what had grown between them. They walked side by side, footsteps crunching softly on the gravel, neither rushing, each word carefully measured, yet the energy between them quickened with every glance and small gesture. Claire spoke first, her voice calm but carrying weight, saying that this didn't have to be decided today, that some feelings needed time to settle, to breathe, to find their place, and Ethan felt a surge of relief mixed with longing, knowing that patience was possible but that the heart often refused to wait. He admitted he didn't want to rush, but also didn't want to lose the connection, the truth of what they had discovered in the past days, and Claire's response was a quiet acknowledgement, a gentle smile tinged with uncertainty, telling him she felt the same, that the honesty they shared mattered more than labels or timelines. They walked a few steps in silence, the driveway stretching ahead, the occasional car passing in the distance, and in that quiet, Ethan realized how profoundly he valued the trust and respect that had grown, the kind of emotional intimacy that doesn't demand immediacy but rewards patience. Claire paused before opening the car door, turning to look at him fully, eyes steady, reflecting warmth, hope, and caution at once, and said the words that would stay with him, "This has been building for a while. Let's respect that, and see where it leads." The simplicity of the statement struck him, the honesty of it more powerful than any dramatic gesture could have been, and Ethan understood that this was not an ending but a beginning, a delicate moment of acknowledgement that required no rash decisions, only awareness and care. As the car pulled away and disappeared down the street, the driveway felt emptier, the house quieter, yet Ethan's heart was full, alive in a way that demanded reflection, a mixture of longing and gratitude for the trust shared, for the recognition of a connection neither had forced but both had nurtured. He stood there, letting the silence settle, aware that life would resume its usual rhythm but that something fundamental had shifted, a recognition that feelings, when acknowledged with honesty and respect, could exist beautifully without urgency, and that the weekend had given them both a rare gift, the awareness of a bond that mattered, fragile yet resilient, something to be honored, tended, and discovered over time. Walking back inside, Ethan felt a calm determination mingled with excitement, understanding that the story between him and Claire was no longer about uncertainty but about choice, about the promise of exploration without crossing boundaries, about the tender acknowledgement of what had been quietly growing for weeks, months, or even years, now brought to the surface in the simplest of truths. The rain-washed driveway, the lingering scent of the evening, the gentle light, and the quiet departure of the car became etched in his memory, a reminder that sometimes the most significant moments aren't marked by dramatic declarations but by the patience to notice, the courage to admit, and the willingness to respect the unfolding of what life and heart had been preparing. Standing alone, Ethan realized that part 4 was the culmination of their weekend in emotional terms, the recognition that love and connection often begin quietly, that timing and respect matter, that the honesty between two people can carry more weight than impulsive action, and that the choice to see where something leads, without forcing it, could be its own kind of romance, deeply meaningful and full of potential, leaving him both fulfilled and aware, ready for the next chapter of a story that had begun with a simple sentence but had grown into a profound, shared understanding that would shape them long after the weekend ended.